So this whole branding thing, here's the 10 things you need to know and do. First of all, branding is the art of separating yourself from everyone else. And you've done that as the water park capital of the world. And by the way, does that mean that all you have is water parks? Absolutely not. But it's the one thing that puts you on the map that'll bring people the furthest. It's that one signature thing. So here's another, downtowns need to stand for something just like you do as a community, but downtown's probably not going to be about water parks. It's going to be about that complementary activity where we do our shopping, dining, and entertainment. And then number 2, a brand is a perception. It's what people think of you. And what they'll do is they'll say, oh yeah, I know Wisconsin Dells, it's the water park capital of the world, but it's stuck in the 70s. That's what I've been hearing. That's what we heard when we went around and asked people. We heard it in the surveys. And by the way, how they create a brand is number 1, the visual cues. It's those 1960s mom and pop hotels, some of the old signs that you have, some of the, even downtown. I mean, it's visual cues. Is it fair? No. But that's what we do. We judge a book by the cover. The people and the attitudes, and then word of mouth. And these days, social media. I mean, social media is instant. The whole rebranding process that used to take 20 years now takes 3 because of social media. It's word of mouth. And so number 3, logos and slogans are not brands. So we didn't even worry about creating a new logo for downtown. I mean, have you ever gone anywhere? Have you ever said, man, let's head up to Bayfield. They have a really cool logo. Or have you ever said, you know, I really don't want to go down to Lake Geneva because I think their logo sucks. By the way, I have no idea what their logo looks like. But you know what? At the end of the day, that's not what this is about. There you go. Brand identities make up 2% of a brand. They get 98% of the political attention. And then number 4, you never use focus groups. So Romy introduced our brand leadership team that's sitting right over there. They were not a focus group. They were the ones to weigh in. Can we make this happen? Can we do this? How do we do it? Where do we get the money? What should we do here? So we did not use focus groups. Because you know what? You'll end up with a list. If we went and asked everybody, what should we do to fix downtown, which we did ask, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. You know what? We'd end up with a project that's so expensive we'd never be able to afford to do it. And then number 5, brands evoke emotion. Wow, let's go downtown. We hear it's really fabulous. Wouldn't that be great? It's a feeling that people have about you. And then number 6, all successful brands are built on product, not marketing, and that's what I'm going to spend most time talking about. Because there you go. The best brands are built on product, not marketing. Branson in those 49 music theaters. Hershey and chocolate. I mean, Napa Valley and wine, you name it. There you go. By the way, these are all private sector. Napa Valley and the wines. Branson and music theater. Wisconsin Dells and water parks. Silicon Valley and high tech. Hershey, Pennsylvania and chocolate. I mean, Nashville country music. These are all built on private sector development. And the same needs to happen downtown with some public help. And then number 7, you never roll out a brand until you can deliver on the promise. So when 10 years ago he said, well, you should be the water park capital of the world, great. At the time you had Noah's Ark and you had some of the other ones, and now you had even more when Kalahari came, and so you were ready to roll it out. And then number 8, you cannot do branding by public consent. We did ask, but feasibility is where we came up with what you're going to see today. There you go. So whatever you want downtown to be known for, some people are going to say, well, I think it should be an Old West theme. Some people might say it should be a Bavarian theme. Some people might say, well, it should be a dining scene. I mean, so what we did is we built it on feasibility. You know, or you end up with something you can't afford. I love this quote. A byproduct of brands for the people is the committee that compromises and kills a potential brand home run. This is why you never see statues of committees in public parks. You see brave leaders. So if we would have done this as a public project, here's what we would have got. This is the typical public project, right? There's enthusiasm. Oh, that Roger Brooks guy came into town. We're really pumped about making downtown an outstanding destination. And then, there's some planning, which we've been doing. And then there'll be disillusionment as some people come out and say, well, I don't agree with that. I think it should have been something else. Now, that probably never happened in Wisconsin Dells, would it? Didn't think so. And then there's fear and panic as people come out, because you know what? The blogs are going to hit tomorrow. And some people say, well, I think that's a bad idea. I think that's going away from who we should be. I think, it's going to happen. I can tell you. And search for the guilty, punishment of the innocent, and finally, praise and honors for the non-participants. Did I get that about right? That's what you call branding by public consent. And then number 9, you build your downtown brand on feasibility, not just local sentiment. So we've figured out, what could we do that will give us the biggest bang on the investment and create a return on the investment? And then finally, you build your brand through PR, advertising used to maintain your ownership position. That is the future. And by the way, there's only 3 killers of this whole downtown branding effort. Number 1 is local politics, and typically it's worse with membership organizations than it is with elected officials. By the way, you know why you don't do branding by public consent? Your elected officials were elected to be all things to all people. Brands can't be. They can't be. And then lack of champions, people willing to push it forward. And then number 3, lack of money, both private and public. By the way, the reason lack of champions is in yellow there, because if you have the right champions in place, they will get through the politics and they will make it happen. They will find the money. Though where there's a will, there's a way. There's never a fourth one. That's the only 3 colors of this. And so over this year, we've been going through this process. It's a 13-step process that we developed after working in about 1,000 communities. I would tell people, boy, I always feel sorry for those first 200 or 300 we worked with, because we didn't know what would make it work. So we came up with this process, and so far this process has 100% success rate. And we've been using it for the last 6 years. 100% so far. So here's the 13 steps. We started with a brand development committee. And these are the team that were on the committee. And they're sitting right over here. I think most of them, not all of them, are right there. This is our group. If you notice, it is stacked with private sector people, because brands need to start with grassroots effort. So you see downtown. I mean, even Romy and the CVB, and even Tom is from private sector. You know what? Because even a VCB, a Visitor and Convention Bureau, is about private sector. And so it is stacked. Other than Nancy and Mayor, this is pretty much all private sector. So we put that together. They've been working on this thing for a year. And then we did education and outreach. If you remember, about a year ago, we did put an online survey out there, and 670 people weighed in. And it was just all essay. It wasn't like there was all predetermined multiple choice. We let people just speak their mind. Some of it was hilarious. Some of it was downright mean. Some of it was really great. And so we interviewed, we talked to people. I had phone calls, emails, you name it, but we did hear. Remember I said you can't do branding with public consent? You still have to ask, because your input is incredibly important. In a nutshell, what we heard, and it's really a thick document, we heard this from a lot of people, and these are not in any particular order, but people said downtown continues to deteriorate. That was a common thread that we saw. We need more quality shops downtown. We heard that really clear. And then many of the motels are cheesy, upgrades and superficial. When I was on the plane with this guy, he said, you know what? He says, I see some of these motels, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, and he said, they think that painting in blue and white is going to make us think differently. And so those are some of the challenges that you have with some of these things, that some of them are kind of stuck in the 60s. They need those upgrades. They need to look more modern. And it starts with signs. But this is just what we heard from you. Downtown needs a focus. Another thing we heard is, here it is here, something to do during the evening hours. Remember I said about conferences, conventions, and the spending? We would like to see the sports played up even more. It's something we heard. Another common thread was parking issues, access signage, more options. You know, I've been in downtown Wisconsin Dells last August and this August, and you know what? I've never had a problem finding parking. Part of the challenge is it's spread all over. But that was an issue that we knew we needed to address somehow. And then more robust off-season. What do we do the other 8 months of the year to make it more robust? Because you have a lot of merchants that just hang on by their teeth for 8 months of the year, and they hope they can make enough during spring breaks and this time of year, maybe the holidays. And then your best assets we saw were the water park, scenery, attractions, family friendly. Because we did ask that too. And then finally, we need more places like the High Rock Cafe.